right. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for hanging out, even though it's getting late. My name's Muriel. I'm co-founder, CEO of Optimum. I'm only from MIT, and I hold the NEC chair in software science and engineering there. I'm going to talk today about private coded gossip. And let me first tell you where we see at Optimum gossip coming in. We see gossip as effectively the ephemeral part of memory. Think of your computer, it's got ROM, it's got RAM, it's got a bus, and the bus is basically the ephemeral part of the memory. That's also our first product, Optimum P2P, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. And I want to tell you a little bit about the underlying tech. We're having some fun discussions this evening with different people, some of them who know a lot about this, some of them are just discovering it. This is RLNC, which is random linear network coding, which I co-invented. It comes from my lab. And the idea here is that you make equations with random coefficients, and you make equations from other equations. This is actually an erasure code. We heard a lot this evening about erasure coding. Often people think that something like a Reed-Solomon is an erasure code. It's actually not an erasure code. It's an error-correcting code, which you can use as an erasure code. As a matter of fact, you can use almost anything that you can find in your sock drawer as an erasure code, okay? An erasure code is just a code that gives you enough equations that you can decode by doing basically Gaussian elimination. I got so annoyed at some point, I stopped teaching Reed-Solomon entirely because it was just actually basically, disseminating old information. So the idea here is that you make equations, and then you get enough equations, you shout bingo, and you're able to recover the initial information. Okay. I'm just going to tell you briefly what this does, why you want to do it. It's optimum. And what we mean by optimum is it's actually optimum. It's actually provably optimum. Given whatever bandwidth you have, you will lower your latency. Even if you have an adversarial system, such as with censorship. And these are some results from our testnet. We have bunches and bunches of wonderful validators on our testnet. This is an example of what you can get. On the left is with RLNC. And you can see basically just you want this to be as low as possible. That's the latency. Versus Gossip Sub. This is a very large testnet with about 100 nodes throughout the world. And you can see for different message sizes and, of course, different message rates and so on, you can see that we get huge gains. Okay. Now, when Dimars invited me, he basically said, as he mentioned before, there were sort of three topics here: scaling, censorship resistance, and anonymity/privacy. We do scaling, we do censorship resistance. So I figured I would talk to you today about the one thing that we don't do currently. But I think there's a lot of fun research to do. And I also wanted to show you one of the ways in which using these kinds of codes, these codes where you're basically working over larger fields and using the size of the field, the size of the finite representation as a tool in your toolbox, what kind of fun things it can give you. Some years ago, so I'll just show you one example, but it's a fun illustrative example. Some years ago, we were working actually on trying to improve Tor. So it was a lot of fun to hear about onion routing. And instead of trying to start from Tor, we actually started thinking about something that people that we liked, which is pastebin. Okay, how many people are familiar with pastebin? Okay, almost everyone. And we thought, pastebin does a pretty good job at publishing anonymously. It's not so bad. But of course, it has some drawbacks. So we actually started thinking, well, what would happen if you were trying to do something which is not static like spacebin, but streaming. So, not permanent memory, but actually um, the ephemeral memory. And also, what would you do if you actually knew about coding? And in particular, we would like to see here some anonymity so that there's an ability for you to pretend that you didn't access what you did access. Okay. Again, this is just a fun example. I'm just going to flash some equations at you to give you a flavor of the kind of really, really fun things you get to do once you play with coding. So here's just our encoding. We have these different data blocks, and we're trying to basically hide the data, but also who listens to what data. So you end up with an interference alignment concept. Interference alignment is a concept from coding. It was actually created by Vivek Kadambi. He's a professor at Georgia Tech, is my former postdoc. Really fun. It's basically you're able to, do fun things with equations by doing things that look like you shouldn't be able to do them, but subtracting equations from each other. But it basically, the reason I'm bringing this up is this really relies on having these secret coefficients, and for the secret coefficients to actually have any sort of oomph to them, these secret coefficients have to be chosen randomly and over a large field size. So they have to be very much in line with these kinds of coding. So I just want to give you a flavor. It's basically just start playing with equations, and it just opens all kinds of fantastic new venues of research. If you want to actually find out more about what we're doing, how we get around, remember hearing from Jonas earlier today. He was talking about the early this evening when he was talking about that explosion of traffic. One of the things that we do is actually we use coding not to have that explosion of traffic, not to have that D. We also use much smarter coding, so we don't need that 2x of Reed Solomon, etc. So feel free to please go on our website and also learn more about us. But I just want to riff a little bit to give you some idea of some variations. I think there's a lot of fun stuff that you can do here. Actually combining this with onion routing type of ideas. I think there's a lot of fun things that you can do. We heard about compression earlier this evening. I think there's a lot of things that you could do there, thinking about the security that comes from being able to compress in a way. If your data is compressible, it's not secure. This is related to the Damois-Skitovich theorem for abelian groups. If any of you are into that sort of thing, it makes it sound like it's a little bit, niche. Well, maybe it is, but yeah. Anyway, a lot of fun things that you can do. Please talk to me afterwards, and I look forward to hearing your questions and comments.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah.
Oh.
Could you elaborate on how, so you said you have an RLNC code, like how it compares to, you said you do random linear combinations, like how does it compare to things like Falcon code, like any kind of fountain codes?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So fountain codes, it disappeared. So fountain codes are end-to-end codes only. You cannot recode them. And they were built originally because it was a misconception that you had to work in binary fields. Okay. There was a misconception that it was very, very difficult to do the inversion if you move from a binary field. And what happens when you're in a binary field is that it's actually hard to find equations which are not going to be basically degenerate with respect to each other, right? And so you end up having these soliton style distributions, that go with those kinds of codes. And the only reason for that is really because of this restriction on the field size. If you think of what you're trying to do, when you do, and again, they're not composable, so they're completely suboptimal as soon as you have a network that's not point to point, and I can explain more to you about it. But, if you think of basically what you're trying to do here, is you're just trying to find for decoding an invertible matrix. And a matrix is invertible when its determinant is non-zero. The determinant is non-zero if you did not hit any roots in the determinant, right? You basically see the roots of the determinant. Let me give you x squared plus x. It's a non-zero polynomial, right? But if you're in binary, it's always going to be 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 1 plus 1 is 1. If you move away from binary, even if you stay in a binary representation but go to an extension field, then actually you will hit away from that finite small set of roots. So that's why it's optimum.
Thank you. Maybe a follow-up question. I think I didn't fully get it.
Yeah.
Fountain codes like Raptor, I can do over G of Q for any Q, right? The Soloton distribution just tells me the degree, and then I add
But
my
you
symbols.
have to, yeah.
It's not restricted to binary fields.
Yeah. So this is they're not composable, right? So you can use this also. So again, they were originally designed with the misconception that the decoding was difficult. It is truly a misconception. So these are optimum. I mean, they're optimum. That paper won a major prize, from the Information Theory Society. These came after, So this is basically the next level, much more general. Basically, this is actually achieves the min cut for an arbitrary network, whereas the Raptor codes will not. They will only asymptotically achieve the min cut in a star network, a depth 1 network. So they're highly suboptimal.
Great for after-hour discussions to follow up. And yeah.
Hi, Professor. In most networks, I've noticed they're naively constructed as optimistically pushed-based networking mechanisms. That data is just broadcasted, sent out without regard of network topology,
right?
Erasure coding aside. Are there any cases in which pull or request-based networking mechanisms make sense to optimize for, I don't know, some factor, or is it always optimal to consistently stream data and then you can add whatever erasure codes or whatever?
Yeah. Let me try to repeat the question because I think there were multiple layers to your question. One was around pull or push. Is that correct? Okay. So generally pull is better, but it's only better to within a constant. Okay, so this will actually get you the optimum of the order optimum. So I'll tell you a funny story. So originally we showed the order optimality, and you just had a little bit of a difference in the constant between pull and push. Pull is usually better. And then my former student Bernhard Hoppler, who then went to be a faculty at CMU and then ETH, came and sat it in my and he just had this big. Anybody know Bernhard from ETH? Or anyway, if you know him, he just sat and he had this huge grin on his face, and he's like, "What you did was way too complicated. I have a much easier way of doing it." And so, interestingly, he showed that for both pull and push, it's optimum again, but there's a small difference. But generally, pull is better. The second part of your question, if I understand correctly, is about the topology. Okay. So the idea is, I get asked a lot, well, wouldn't you do better with this topology or that topology? And the answer is no. The topology is whatever resources you have. And the point is to make optimum use of the resources you have. And so, maybe I have a star, but maybe I have, a little node here and a little node there and a little bit of bandwidth here and a little bit of bandwidth there. Use them. Use everything that you have. So it's making optimum use of the resources you have. There's, of course, a dual, right? And the dual of that is if I'm trying to get these messages in the shortest amount of time, or within some amount of time, what is the cheapest way for you to do that, right? One is the dual of the other. So it's not a tree. It's not a star. It's basically a mesh. I don't know if that answered your questions. Yeah, great. Okay.
Yeah, well, I think we okay, one quick question as we will be kicked out of this room in like 30 at 9:30.
Okay.
Yeah, but maybe just shoot the question while
I have a really quick and really possibly naive question. I think I might be thinking about this the wrong way. Is that optimal quality that you're talking about, does that apply to every message size, or is there like a threshold below which like a small enough message is well, let me rephrase that, sorry. Is this geared towards large messages or small message, and is there a difference, and am I thinking about this correctly?
Yeah. So generally, you see more of a gain as messages get larger, but unlike, say, something like Raptor codes, fountain codes, and so on, you don't need to have a large message size for it to kick in. Basically, really, what you need is that you have a few symbols in whatever representation you're using. And to give you an example, we used an extension field of f sub 2 to the 8. I like to joke that if you take 8 and you put it on its side, you notice the optimum infinity, that it's infinity, right? Because basically 2 to the 8 is almost as good as infinity in practice.